have you ever felt a subtle shiver deep in your consciousness, as if you were living a final chapter rather than just another ordinary episode? Perhaps you have looked around and noticed that while many cling to every detail of this reality, trapped in everyday dramas, addicted to the frantic hustle, you experience an almost enigmatic detachment. It is as if a part of you knows that here, now, is not your ultimate home, and that destiny is calling you to somewhere beyond time. Imagine that this entire complex system of births and deaths, this whole story of possible reincarnations, actually has an exit, a vanishing point reserved only for those who have taken the final turn on the wheel of existence. There are people who live with the silent certainty of having walked these paths many times. They recognize patterns and subtle signs that others ignore. And what if this entire trajectory is not an infinite cycle, but rather a labyrinth with a secret door at its end? It may be that as you read these words, you feel a slight chill down your spine, a gentle premonition. Could it be that you are about to discover this exit? Various spiritual currents will say that the soul is trapped in samsara, the cycle of births and deaths, until it reaches a certain degree of mastery or enlightenment. But what if modern physics adds an unexpected twist to this story, suggesting that time is not linear and that what we are is not confined to the brain? In this scenario, reincarnation might not be a sequential process, but a tangle of realities occurring simultaneously. Freeing oneself from the wheel would not be about moving forward, but about completely stepping out of the illusion of time. The most devastating secret of this theory is that perhaps you are not who you think you are. The identity you fiercely defend, including your name, your memories, and your emotions, may be nothing more than a passing blur on a much vaster canvas. Perhaps you are one step away from taking an extraordinary leap. In the following pages, we will delve into 7 signs that may indicate you are living your final human incarnation. But do not rush to conclusions. First, it is necessary to assimilate some concepts that might unravel your view of reality as you know it. If you feel an inner call, if you realize that something in this text resonates with certainties you never dared admit out loud, perhaps the end of your journey is closer than you imagine. Prepare yourself, for nothing you discover here will leave you indifferent. It will shake your certainties, unsettle your foundations, and, with a bit of luck, or destiny, it may finally free you from the eternal repetition of birth and death. First, a stranger in the tapestry of life. Have you ever felt like a spectator in your own existence, as if the rest of humanity were acting in a play and you were merely watching from behind the curtains? You see people running, chasing things that for you have already lost all meaning: money, fame, approval, recognition. You even mingle among them, converse, participate in social activities, yet deep down there is an unfathomable detachment. This feeling of lucid disconnection is not the same as apathy or depression. It is more like a detachment that arises from an intimate certainty that everything is transient. It is like watching a scene where the actors take their roles so seriously that they forget that sooner or later the curtain will fall. Yet you can never forget that all of this is merely a temporary spectacle. Quantum physics, with the idea that consciousness might exist outside the brain, provides an intriguing argument for this perception. Because if consciousness is a phenomenon not limited to the physical body, perhaps this stranger feeling is a clue that something in you exists in a middle ground between this reality and a higher dimension. Various spiritual schools describe this state as a gradual awakening. It is the moment when one begins to suspect that nothing seen is as real as it appears. We are all actors, but some start to remember that deep down we were never separated from the main scriptwriter. For those who find themselves in their final incarnation, this detachment is deeper than a philosophical doubt. It is a visceral reminder that physical reality is not the final abode. Therefore, if you feel like an almost extraterrestrial observer of human behavior, perhaps you are a traveler about to definitively abandon the ship, delving into disenchantment. This does not mean that you should underestimate or belittle life. On the contrary, you may find it very beautiful in its fleeting nature. with its joys and tragedies. However, your emotional involvement differs from that of the majority. Problems that for many are devastating for you seem part of a script already read. Something deep inside you knows that the attachments that keep so many people awake at night are as ephemeral as clouds drifting across the sky. You realize that the roles, father, mother, executive, student, artist, are mere temporary fantasies that the soul dons. But this clarity can isolate you, and not out of arrogance, but because it is a comprehension difficult to explain to those still immersed in the drama. Second, déjà vus that transcend common explanation. We have all felt a breeze of familiarity at some point, that moment when we say, "I have lived this before." However, there is a difference between a fleeting déjà vu, attributed to a brain flash, and the deep, overwhelming experience of recognizing an exact moment as if you were leaping between lines of time. When this déjà vu goes beyond, seems familiar, and becomes an intense certainty that you have been in that place before, doing exactly the same thing, with the same people and even the same heartbeat, perhaps you are perceiving something beyond a neuronal glitch. It might be a misalignment in the time matrix, a quantum superposition of realities in which your consciousness captures, for an instant, other lives, parallel or past. Frequently, people who are close to final liberation, i.e. to leaving the cycle of reincarnations, report increasingly frequent and intense déjà vus. They feel that they access memories that do not belong to their current history, but to completely different existences. Places never before visited that are remembered in impossible detail. Conversations with people who seem intimate, although they have never met in this life. Einstein's theory of relativity and certain interpretations of quantum physics suggest that time might not flow in a single direction, nor be a firm line connecting past and future. This opens up the possibility that all realities coexist simultaneously. Thus, if your consciousness is leaving behind the illusion of linearity, it is possible that you are becoming aware of multiple lines of life coexisting in the eternal now, a breach in the simulation. If we were part of a simulation, a profound and recurring déjà vu would be a glitch in the program. A moment when the screen that separates realities becomes thinner. And the more this happens, the more you realize that there is something behind the stage of your existence. It is at that point that the inevitable question arises: if all my lives occur at the same time, what is my true role in this story? The answer can be frightening or enlightening. Depending on your perspective, perhaps you are nothing more than a node of consciousness exploring infinite possibilities. When you understand this, the traditional system of reincarnation, a life after life, separated by death, begins to crumble like an oversimplified myth. Third, absence of fear of death, born from a deep memory. The fear of death is considered an ancestral instinct. It protects us from dangers and makes us fight for survival. However, there are people who do not fear death, not because they are reckless or seek death, but because within them exists a serene certainty. Death is not the end. Although this might seem like a religious or mystical view, it can also be an indication that you have already passed through so many transitions between life and death that the veil no longer deceives you. For some, the disappearance of the physical body is felt as a change of scenery, not as the definitive collapse of identity. And this perception challenges the conventional view of evolutionary psychology, which insists that death should be seen as the ultimate threat. Memories of other deaths. Some people who do not fear death report experiences or vivid dreams in which they relive scenes of past demises, ancient battles, natural disasters, terminal illnesses from centuries past. They feel that they have died countless times and that there was always something, a spark of consciousness, that persisted beyond the last breath. This echoes the descriptions of near-death experiences, NDEs, in which those who return report an indescribable sense of peace, as if reuniting with a primordial source, or light. Perhaps, if you feel that unsettling calm in the face of your own physical death, it is because you are no longer so attached to the illusion. It might be that you have freed yourself from the axis of the ego, which needs to believe in its uniqueness and finitude. If that is your case, it is a powerful indication that your cycle may be coming to an end. It is not about wishing to die, but about noticing that fear has ceased to play a fundamental role in how you relate to the world. And without that fear, much of the system of reincarnation, based on attachments and aversions, loses its hold on you. Fourth, synchronicities that seem to speak to you. When reality begins to seem like a dialogue, instead of a succession of random events, something extraordinary may be happening. We are talking about synchronicities, situations so specific and unlikely that it is hard to attribute them to mere chance. Perhaps you think of someone and almost instantly receive a call from that person, or you get a message containing exactly the answer to the question that has been tormenting you for days. Or then, whenever you feel on the verge of giving up, a concrete sign appears, a book, a song, a conversation you overhear on the street that restores your hope. Synchronicities are subtle threads that stretch between your mind and reality, showing that you are not separate from your environment. Following the logic of quantum mechanics, the observer's consciousness affects the observed. This suggests that the mind may be an integral part of the structure of the universe. When we understand this, synchronicities cease to be mere coincidences and become responses from a larger system that communicates with you. Your internal reality shapes the external. If you notice that your moods, thoughts, and intentions seem to be reflected almost instantly in the world around you, you might be experiencing a higher degree of consciousness. It is like learning to lucid dream while awake. As you delve into this phenomenon, you may notice that your desires manifest with surprising ease when there is no internal resistance. This leads you to question, is this world real? Or is it a projection that adapts to my level of understanding? Perhaps. When a soul is about to end its cycle of incarnations, the barrier that separates the inner world from external reality becomes much thinner, almost transparent. From this perspective, synchronicities would be the confirmation that you are about to cross the threshold of the game and see the code that sustains it. Fifth, a deep feeling of existential satiety. While many are driven by insatiable desires, more money, more recognition, more adventures, there are those who reach a point of fulfillment that is independent of what one has or achieves. There is a tranquility that escapes the understanding of those who cling to future goals. It is not a matter of resignation or laziness. It is not that you have lost the ability to dream or set goals. It is more the dissolution of that anxiety which pushes people to seek outside what has always been within. Those who live in this state can enjoy worldly pleasures, but they do not cling to them. They may feel pain, but they do not transform it into an existential tragedy. The end of the relentless quest. Eastern philosophies such as Buddhism speak of the cessation of desire as one of the keys to liberating oneself from suffering. This is often misunderstood as stopping to desire, but it is something deeper. It is about releasing the attachment that binds us to the wheel of karma. When that attachment ceases, the chain that compels reincarnation is broken. If you recognize in your life an absence of urgency to acquire more, if your inner peace does not oscillate with the highs and lows of the world, it is possible that you have transcended the spell. Perhaps you have already played so many roles, experienced so many lives, glories, and miseries in other lifetimes, that now nothing tells you you need to achieve this to be complete. Curiously, this inner freedom often generates misunderstanding. Others might mistake you for someone without ambition, when in fact your sense of fulfillment does not depend on external validation, but on an inner source. And that is one of the hallmarks of a soul preparing to leave the stage. Sixth, perceiving the illusion behind reality. Our senses deceive us, yet most people accept the official version without hesitation. The sky is blue, time passes, objects have intrinsic colors. However, if you have stopped to reflect, you must have noticed that everything we feel is an interpretation by the brain in response to stimuli that we do not even actually touch. Physics shows that, at a subatomic level, the idea of solidity dissolves. Nothing is as solid as it appears. There is more empty space than mass between atoms. Our eyes do not see colors as such, but wavelengths that the brain translates into hues. Touch is nothing more than electromagnetic repulsion between electrons. In short, everything we call physical reality is a virtual representation that our nervous system constructs from sensory information. If we add to this the theories of the holographic universe, which suggest that the entire cosmos is a vast field of information projected in multiple dimensions, the question becomes radical. After all, what is truly real? The threshold of the great revelation. When you are in your final incarnation, a deep skepticism about the supposed solidity of the world tends to emerge. You can no longer conceive of reality as something fixed and definitive. Instead, you suspect that everything is malleable, relative, and ultimately a co-created illusion. This state of mind puts you in a position where the boundaries between matter, energy, and consciousness become blurred. On one hand, it brings you closer to cutting-edge science that studies the nature of the universe. On the other, it brings you closer to ancient spiritual traditions that have always maintained that form is emptiness and emptiness is form. Being at this threshold does not mean disconnecting from existence, but experiencing it with such a broad perspective that it becomes almost impossible to continue acting as if the visible were all that exists. And when that perspective solidifies, you break one of the last chains that bind you to the cycle. Seventh, discovering that the self you know was never real. This is perhaps the most sublime and at the same time the most devastating secret. After exploring the sensations of strangeness, déjà vu, the absence of fear of death, synchronicities, existential satiety, and the perception of the illusion of reality, we come to the heart of the matter. You are not who you thought you were. The notion of an individual self separate from the environment and others may be a mental construct, and if the true you is in fact pure consciousness, an infinite ocean in which your individual identity is nothing more than a fleeting wave. When the wave subsides, not emptiness remains, but the fullness of the sea, the dissolution of the ego, and the end of the wheel. Many spiritual paths teach that enlightenment arises with the death of the ego, that structure that makes us feel separate, unique, and unrepeatable. In Western culture, we celebrate individuality as an achievement. But for pure consciousness, the ego is an illusory boundary that prevents unity with the source. The cycle of reincarnation, according to various traditions, persists as long as the mind remains identified with a form. Each life is an opportunity to see beyond that identification. When we finally understand that we are nothing, in the sense of having no limits, we also discover that we are everything in the sense of universal interconnectedness. Breaking the cycle does not mean disappearing into absolute nothingness. Rather, it means realizing that you have always been part of a greater whole. Upon recognizing this, the need to be born again in another mask dissolves, for you understand that you have never ceased to be existence itself, manifesting in multiple ways. And what happens when, finally, the wheel stops turning for you? Do you merge into a dimension of pure light, experience the total dissolution of identity, or become something that human imagination cannot conceive? The truth is that definitive answers elude us. However, if something you have read here resonated deeply, perhaps you have recognized signs that your individual journey is about to come to an end. It may be that you are one step away from awakening to this reality that has always surrounded you, waiting for you to lift the veil of illusion. If you feel that this message speaks to you, allow it to settle within you. There is no need to force anything. The seed of understanding germinates on its own when the soil is ready. Observe your daily experiences. Do you still feel like a stranger? Are your déjà vus growing stronger? Do the synchronicities seem to guide you? Do you no longer find reasons to desperately seek something in the world? Are you beginning to suspect that the true key lies in discovering the illusion of the self? If most of these answers are yes, perhaps your soul is in the antechamber of final liberation. At this point, the word enlightenment ceases to be a distant ideal and becomes a natural state of being. the recognition that you were never a separate entity, but pure consciousness expressing itself in a cosmic dance. Reaching this point is not the end in the conventional sense. It may be an indescribable beginning, a kind of return home after countless adventures. Only you will know when you cross that door. And now, if you have truly absorbed this knowledge, if something within you vibrates in tune with these ideas, write, share, internalize. That spark of doubt or confirmation may be the final push you needed to see the great truth. If you have reached this last line, comment 100% to confirm that you have received the message in the very core of your being. And if you wish to continue delving into these mysteries, stay alert to the signs that existence offers. Perhaps the next clue is just around the corner. Thank you for coming this far. Feel free to look back with new eyes or move forward into the unknown. In any case, remember, the game does not end when you open your eyes, but when you understand that you have always been the creator of your own dreams.